I filmed this entire video already this morning, went to check the footage, and I don't know, the mic must not have been plugged in or it wasn't working, so I have to redo the whole video. Not happy about it, but here we go. Second time should go faster, right? I think so. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. How much car can you really afford? This is a question that can make or break your financial future. Get it wrong and you can end up being car rich and cash poor, driving something flashy while you struggle to keep up with the payments. Cars are one of the most tempting big ticket purchases, and if you're not careful, they can derail your financial plans. Which brings us to, is there one number you can follow, one number to focus on to know that you're buying a car that you can actually afford? Perhaps you've heard of the common car buying rule of 24 and 10, where you put 20% down, finance for no more than 4 years, and your car and all car-related expenses are no more than 10% of your gross income. That's pretty straightforward. But recently, I heard Dave Ramsey shine light on a new rule of his own. First and foremost, we know Dave Ramsey to be no debt Dave, so it comes as no surprise that when he says his first rule when it comes to buying a car is the car you can afford is the car you can pay for in cash. I think that can be a really useful rule to follow, and one that if you follow it, it will keep you out of financial trouble, because most vehicles are depreciating assets, so why would you want to take out a really large loan on something that's just going to be worth less and less and less over time? So if you can buy a safe and reliable vehicle for all cash, I definitely think that's the ideal route to go. But I also understand that sometimes we may not have the means to do so. So if you do need to finance, go with a modest vehicle and finance the least amount possible. Your money has better uses than going to something that's just depreciating in value over time. But as far as assigning a dollar figure to this vehicle that you can afford, beyond what you can just buy in cash, Ramsey says, as a general rule, the total value of all your vehicles combined shouldn't be more than half your annual income. He goes on to say, better yet, add up the total of everything you own that has a motor in it. Boat, lawnmower, motorcycle, cars, etc., and make sure the total value of those things doesn't exceed 50% of your annual income. If it's above 50%, that means you have too much of your net worth tied up in things that typically go down in value. Let's take a look at this guideline from a numbers stance. The median household income in the US is about $80,000. The typical price of a new car is around $48,000, and for a used car, it's about $25,000. I will add one caveat here. Those car numbers, those are averages, and there are some really expensive cars out there that bring up those averages. So let's add a little bit more context. In June 2024, 40% of new car transactions were under $40,000, and 26% were between $30,000 and $40,000. Likewise, we've also seen some pretty big improvements in the prices of used cars in the recent history after the run-up in prices following the shortage of supply in the pandemic era. I think this can be really useful to know because so often we see these attention-grabbing headlines telling us that vehicles are at record high prices, but it's still possible to find modestly priced new or used vehicles. So if we were to say you had the typical household income of $80,000 and bought the typical used car for $25,000, you would pass the Ramsey test. Your vehicle would be less than half your household income. From this perspective, it would be fairly easy to even get a new vehicle and still fit within this guideline as well. But when you get to a multi-car household, well, that's when things get a little bit tighter. Let's say again that you have a household income of $80,000, but you need 2 vehicles. Well, now the rule is that all vehicles should be worth less than half the household income. That means the total value of all the vehicles in this case would be less than $40,000. It's certainly doable, but it may require modesty. It may require driving your vehicle for longer than you had anticipated. It certainly may mean that when one person upgrades their vehicle, the other person might not be able to at the same time. You might have to stagger things a bit. And conveniently, if you were to combine Ramsey's suggestion of a vehicle's value with the often cited 24 and 10 rule, you might see that the numbers aren't too far off. With a household income of $80,000, following this rule, you could have $40,000 in total vehicles value. If you put 20% down, or $8,000, and finance the remaining $32,000 over 48 months or 4 years with excellent credit, 750 or higher, your auto payment would be roughly $765 a month, which comes out to be 11.4% of your gross income. So we can say that it gets you close. It's not a perfect fit, but it's close. If I can add my own 2 cents here, I love being as conservative as possible when it comes to vehicles. If you can buy one outright in cash, I think that's the ideal route to go. But maybe that's not realistic for you. And if not, I love the idea of putting down as much of a down payment as you can, financing the least amount possible over the shortest time period possible. Also, I'd like to add the extra conservative touch of looking at these finance rules from the perspective of net income. So your actual income from the perspective of take-home pay rather than gross income. And I also like to add in all the costs related to the car into this car category. So looking at fuel and insurance and maintenance. Does that mean that you would be looking at a much more modest vehicle or having to do a larger down payment? Absolutely. If we look at an income of $80,000, after taxes, the take-home pay is about $5,400 a month. So to fit a car payment, fuel, insurance, and maintenance into 10% of that gives you a budget of about $540 to work with. That makes things much more complicated. But I can say you will never regret having a smaller car payment or no car payment. You will never regret having more breathing room within your budget. If you have more breathing room within your budget, you can actually get in your car and go do something fun. Maybe take a trip with your family. If you don't have breathing room in your budget, you might be stuck at home looking out the window at your car parked in the driveway. One of the things to keep in mind is that your credit score is strongly tied to your interest rate on an auto loan. Auto loans can easily get to the double-digit category if you have a poor credit score. And it's also worth noting that auto loan rates on new vehicles are more favorable than those on used vehicles. And loans for shorter durations are more favorable than loans for longer durations, simply because the longer the loan, the more risk to the lender that the loan isn't repaid. I never like to make blanket statements like you can never buy a new vehicle. It always has to be used. I think what's most important is that you buy a vehicle that fits within your budget. If it's new, great. If it's used, great. What matters is that you have a safe and reliable vehicle that fits within your budget. And if you're in a position where you can't buy a vehicle outright in cash, that you need financing, work to build up as much of a down payment as you can, while also making sure to work to build up your credit score so you qualify for the best possible interest rates, because the less you pay in interest, the better. Your money has way better uses than paying some obnoxiously high interest rate to a bank. And keep in mind, when it comes to buying a vehicle, advice on how much of a vehicle you can afford is really all over the place. So you really have to be careful of who you listen to. For instance, I found this little gem. Financial experts say to not spend more than 35% of your annual income on the car itself and the costs that come with your purchase. 35% seems astronomically high. That's in line with housing and even on the high end of that. If we're talking about an $80,000 a year income, that's $28,000 going to your vehicle or vehicle-related costs. That's over $2,300 a month. There's no way that's affordable. But notice where this recommendation is listed. Dick Hanna Dealerships. It's a car dealer. So safe to say they aren't giving you an unbiased opinion. Rule number 1, you do not want the dealership to set your price. You should have a firm price in mind before you ever set foot in a car dealership. With other recommendations, you may hear that you could let transportation be up to 15% of your budget, or as we covered in this video, around 10% of your budget. My thoughts are just go conservative. Leave room in your budget for anything else, whether that is housing, investing, saving, having fun. Remember that vehicles are depreciating assets and nobody really cares what you drive. What are your thoughts on Ramsey's rule when it comes to car buying? Leave your answer in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. My wrist just cracked. I hope that's not on the mic because I'm done. To remind myself, slow. My hair is stuck in my armpit. It was off camera, but it almost fell over. least you didn't see it.